Hello, hello, hello. How are you today? I am here today in honor of my little boy Isaac to share his birth story. I felt like it would be really beautiful to share this story with you. So he turns 3 on November 9th, and this time of year, it's funny. So he's my second child, and this time of year, it's like all of like the change in the weather, and there's like all these sensations that remind me of his birth. So I thought about telling you Lincoln's, birth story, but when she was born, it's like hyacinths were blooming, and like the spring rains were coming, and it's like the world was totally different. And this time of year in Scorpio season is when my little boy decided to chose to arrive. And so go ahead and like grab some tea and snuggle in with me for like a good old sisterly birth story. I didn't know these were a thing until I had Lincoln, and then once I found out that women were sharing each other's birth stories, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is everything. I had a really rough pregnancy with Isaac. Like it was I had a lot of back problems. I was in the chiropractor every week. I pulled a muscle. I wasn't able to actually walk for I was bedridden and could not walk for a few days because I pulled a muscle in my groin. I'm a very petite person, and carrying a baby was like, it just was a lot on my body. And I'm still like getting my hips 3 years later, and I'm still working to get my hips like totally back to where they were before I had kids. So the pregnancy with Isaac was a lot, but the birth was awesome. And I was having pre-labor pains. I remember they started October 16th, and he was born on November 9th. So I started to have those contractions and those just, I really felt him coming down. His due date was before November 9th. So he was born, I think it was the 7th or the 8th that he was due. And then he was born on the 9th. So yeah, so the pregnancy was long. I was really ready to have him when his time came. And I don't think I realized how many days I was in labor, because I remember waking up on the 9th, and that whole night before, I was really in that kind of lucid, not really, just sort of like dream state that you start to enter when you go into labor. I don't know what a better word to call it other than it's like reality and like dreams are all kind of being seen at the same time. And so that's what November 8th was very much like for me. And I was in bed a lot of that day before he was born, and really spent a lot of time just stretching and on my big ball, just like moving around and moving when I could. And even in bed, I was like, almost felt like I was swimming a lot. You know what I mean? Just like your body in stillness when you're pregnant is just really uncomfortable. So that morning came on the 9th, and my husband Ben went to work, and I was in labor. Like as soon as I woke up, I was in labor. And I knew it, but for some reason I was having a hard time like communicating. Did any of you have had babies? I mean, it's hard to speak sometimes. It's hard to actually form words because you're so in another dimension that it was like to even call my husband and tell him like I'm having Isaac, and we knew his name was going to be Isaac. I think we did find out from an ultrasound that he was a boy, but I already knew he was a boy. I knew as soon as I conceived that little guy, I knew exactly I knew him. And so he was ready. He was ready to be Earthside, and he was ready. So like I remember calling Ben and being like, it's like now, like right now. You need like get here now. And luckily he didn't work too far. We were in St. Louis at the time. We were living in St. Louis. And it was actually our last like weeks in St. Louis when I gave birth to Isaac. Um, and I decided to birth at a birthing center. Um, in different circumstances, I think a home birth would have been fine, but I love birth centers. Like I love the all of the help. I love all of the like super clean, like respectful, like team of people around me. And by clean, I just mean like the sheets are super clean, like the floors are super clean, like everything is just like really, really nice. And there's like a huge hot tub right next to your bed, and it's all just like it's made for birthing. So I think in like a different home or a different situation, maybe a home birth would have been right. But we lived pretty close to like one of the most epic birth centers like in Missouri. So that is what I opted for. And I was super happy with that decision. And we got there, and I remember in the car on the way there, we're in traffic, we're in morning traffic on the way there. So it was like, I felt like the car was crawling, and I'm yelling at Ben, and I'm like digging my nails into whatever I can grab onto because the pain is very real. And I'm telling him, even though we've practiced this time and time like before, I'm like, this time I can't do it. When I gave birth to Lincoln, my daughter, the first birth I had, I did it completely without any additional medication, other than like some honey sticks and coconut water, and it was a very long labor. And so this time I didn't know what to expect for how long I was going to be in labor, because with Lincoln, I think I was in active labor for like 14 hours or something like that. With Isaac, I was in that real active labor for not that long, for like 4 hours maybe. Yes, because I woke up early that morning, and then he was born about 4 hours. So I'm in the car on the way to the hospital, and I'm telling him, like, I don't think I can do it naturally this time. I think, like, I don't care. I'm in that space of where just like this pain is blinding me. Like, I can't, like, the physical pain is so much. So there was only that one moment, like, being in the car, the pain was so much more. Now, looking back on that, and pretty soon after I gave birth to him, I realized that when you're not in the right environment for birthing, the pains that you experience are way more significant. So I do think that that is probably one of the biggest advantages to having that home birth, is you never interrupt the birthing process. So like if I were to do it again, it's really hard to say, because the apartment we lived in at the time, I didn't want to give birth in it. I didn't want to. It wasn't built for that. It just wasn't. So it wasn't the right space. If I would have had the right home space, I think a home birth would have been really ideal. Like the home we lived in Sedona, that would have been really ideal for like a home birth. It was quiet, like there was space between neighbors. I wasn't in an apartment, a very, very old building where I could hear the people around me, like in a sketchy part of town. Like it just was different. So that transport of taking that ride, that was when I felt the most pain. When I got into the room and it was silent again, and I could hear myself breathe, and I could hear myself think, and there wasn't like honking traffic around me, that was when it was like I could get back into myself and into my zone and be with water, and then it was all good again. So and I wasn't like gritting my teeth and just being like angry, pretty much, like angry woman in labor. But that was kind of the worst of it. We got into the room, and then I could tell like I'm giving birth soon. I could feel that he was coming really like pretty soon. And as soon as we got into that birthing room, it was so kind. One of the nurses told me, she's like, you have the most control. Like, you are so in control of your body right now. And I was just so honored by that. I was like, oh my, thank you. Like, that is like, that's one of the coolest things to hear when you're in labor, is like, or she told me that right after he was born. So I felt like I could really get into a really good meditative space as soon as we were there. And it was such a beautiful space to give birth in. So anyway, so I was in the hot tub for just a little while, and they pretty much said, they're like, you're there, like, we need to get out of the water. The particular birthing center we were at did not allow for underwater births. I don't remember the reasoning why, but it wasn't allowed. It was a rule. Like, you couldn't give birth in the tubs. You had to give birth outside of the tubs. So I got out of the tub. I was really sad to get out of the tub, but I got out of the tub, and I actually, there were railings that you could hold onto on the walls, which is the other like awesome part about giving birth in a birthing center. They got all the tools, like all the, like, it's built for labor. It was just like, I felt so supported in that space. So I'm holding on to this railing and really breathing, and the midwife, and I'm standing up, and the midwife is right behind me on one side, and Ben's sort of like right on my other, and I'm breathing into, like, oh my God, I can feel that rush of like, you know, that there's this incredibly intense fire that happens, like that ring of fire, right? So I remember feeling and hearing Isaac tell me, like, okay, it's gonna happen now. As I was inhaling, I was like on the inhale, and he's like, all right, here I come. And it was like on that exhale that the contraction like really happened. And I, like, you know, did the bear down, and I thought he was going to completely, you know, come out. But in that, so then in that contraction, and I finished that exhale, and that, you know, the natural push that comes, that your body knows to do. And it was only like his head that came out on that first push, and I'm still standing. And so I take another, and I'm like bearing down and like not screaming, but like allowing that like primordial noise to come through, which was great. And so then on that next inhale, I was like, this, you know, like, I've got this. But he was in that in between space there for a minute, and I was really proud of myself that I was able to really control through those breaths, because like, you can imagine like the amount of pressure and like physical kind of like pain that was there was like really a lot to breathe into. And then as soon as that passed, it was like all pain completely gone. And that's the real like incredible thing about being able to like have a natural birth, is that it is your body really knows what it's doing, and it knows how to respond to you in a really beautiful way, like in a way that's really difficult to describe. It's really difficult in a story or in a conversation to explain the chemicals that are happening, like the hormones that are being released, the complete euphoria that ensues. And so, you know, I gave birth to him standing up, and I reached down and I pulled him up to my chest. My knees did get a little bit weak, so, you know, because I'm holding him and standing there, and my legs are tired from giving birth for hours, you know, and being in labor and carrying this baby that is just, you know, big. I think he was not over 9 pounds. I'm pretty sure he was a big baby. And so it was about 10 a.m. when he was born. And then I remember feeling like, when I sort of came back into like kind of understanding where my surroundings were, that in that moment when Isaac was in that in between, you know, his head was exposed, but his body was still within me, that I really felt Saint Germain witnessing the birth really, really strongly. And just being in that and not saying anything, just witnessing and just being there and being present and just being there. No messages, nothing, but just like a presence that I'll always really, really treasure. And right next to my husband, like almost like just avatar, like right next to my husband, just presence. And I'm sure that there were like many other guides and other, that's all, but he was the one that really wanted to be known in my awareness in that moment, outside of just like Isaac and I. He was just like, I'm here. I'm blessing Isaac. And his name is Isaac Germain Burke. There was just such a strong moment there that really, I really wanted to honor. And when I was pregnant with Isaac, we made a pilgrimage to Mount Shasta, and that was like just this like incredible time being there. It was really life-changing for Ben and I, and as an homage to like his birth and that trip to Mount Shasta when I was pregnant with him and carrying him, that mountain is very popular, regarded as like Saint Germain having protecting the violet flame in Mount Shasta, and so that felt very fitting for him. So and then we just laid together, and he immediately started nursing, almost immediately started nursing, I would say within 15 minutes or something. They latch on pretty quickly. I did let Isaac find his way to me, so I just laid him and I let him it's funny to like impersonate, but can you imagine like being that little newborn who's like experiencing like air for the first time, right? I allowed him to find where he needed to be to feed. That was so cool. That was so cool to watch him like know my body. He's like, oh, I know what to do. I just gotta find where I need to be, and he's like, eyes aren't even open, and he's just like, but I know food's somewhere here. And then he latched on almost immediately when he had his awareness of like where he was, and latching on. And that was like, it's one of the happiest moments of my life. I mean, to say happy, it just was so heavenly. That moment is pure heaven, and the days to come after that, it's pure heaven. You go to heaven and get your baby. That really is what happens. Like you go to heaven. You're here, and you get your baby. And I know that's not everyone's experience, but I really prepared myself in a way that I knew that was the experience I wanted to happen. I know that that's what's possible from others. And I knew that was possible because of the experience I had with Lincoln. So I came into this second birth with like more confidence. So it would be fun to share maybe Lincoln's birth story, because I was not as confident in that birthing experience because it was my first one. And there was still a lot I didn't really understand about myself, and really even where I came from, and what, like there was just so much that I didn't really understand. It was kind of, before my real like major awakening unfolded, but it was still quite an experience. Giving birth to Lincoln, I would say, was absolutely a very multi-dimensional experience. So if you want to hear about that, let me know in the comments. And it just felt really, really sweet and really fun to come in and share something just more intimate to my journey. And giving birth to Isaac and getting to know him while I was pregnant with him, and now that he's, his own sovereign little person. He is incredible. He is he is a gift. If I've ever received one, he's a gift. And so is Lincoln too. My two babies are just, I'm speechless. So I'll leave it that way. So I'm wishing you every blessing and every blessing. And thank you so much for hearing my story. I love you.